So, our next episode, marine mammals. This was a piece or pieces that I found in North Carolina years ago that I knew was part of a skull. And after years of attempting, I finally was able to figure out the positioning. And that's how this hooks up. This is the nasal of a very small dolphin. And the underside, where it is nice and scooped out, is the actual brain case of the animal. So a rather small dolphin. Probably from the Pungo, but because of my collecting habits. But there's a good chance this might be from the Yorktown Formation due to the lack of any attachment of the limestone. I spent my time in Pungo first and then Yorktown second. Here's another skull from Aurora, North Carolina. I had a habit there of, I'll call it trash picking. I would not hesitate to slow down and look at areas where people had been before, and this time it paid off for me. You can see, maybe not so well in the video, but there's definitely whited areas here where the side of this skull had been bleached out, covered up with sediment. And for those who really didn't know what they were looking at, they passed it over. I happened to notice the bulla. And when I went to pick it up, I realized it was whole, started dusting off the area, and realized I had found a dolphin skull. And lucky for me, it was at the end of the day and within the last 100 yards of the ramp going out of the mine. This was another skull that was prepped by Billy Palmer. And he was able to not only get out the bulla, which is in excellent condition and should be identified species, also attached in the sediment was the periodic, or the other ear bone. So I had the Calvert Marine Museum just casually look at this a couple of years ago. It doesn't appear to be a new species. It will end up going to the Marine Museum one of these days. But Billy did a great job of prepping this out. This wasn't as encased as the squalodon that he worked on, but definitely enough here diagnostically to at one point get down to a species level. This other guy, well, these are these long snouted dolphins known from the Calvert Cliffs. This is fairly well complete. For the skull, this was a block on a beach. This was probably zone 11. We had walked by this for weeks. The end of the snout was actually sticking out of a large block of clay, and every time I walked by, I just touched the tip of it and it rubbed off like lignite or the unfossilized carbon wood down there. And then one day I just decided I'm going to poke at this a little bit more. And when I slowed down to look at it, I noticed off to the side were some ribs and vertebra. So I do have about a third or so of this animal in my collection. It's a common species along the cliff. It will go to the Calvert Marine Museum eventually. But things like this can be found along the Calvert Cliffs. I would urge you, if you find something and you don't have the experience, I have over 20 years with the Marine Museum. I have the equipment with me or the ability to go back and get this. Don't mess with it. These things are 15 million years in the waiting. It can wait a day or two for the professionals to get out there. So if you see something like this, call the Calvert Marine Museum. Oh, our guest is back. And head out. Try to cover it up as best you can and leave it for the professionals. Like I said, this one's been looked at. I use this as educational pieces. It's still in my house. But anything scientifically important, in order for it to be studied, in order for it to be named, needs to be at a permanent repository such as the Calvert Marine Museum, Smithsonian, Virginia Museum of Natural History, etc. So these are just a few of the cool things, marine mammal wise, that I found collecting over the years, and wanted to share them with you. Thanks.